Ladies and gentlemen, hello again and welcome back to Don't Worry About the Government. This time is an audio only edition for those of you watching on the video feed. Bryan has selected a person that I'm choosing to interpret is Neil Ferrigno, or Lou Ferrigno, the Incredible
Neil
Hulk.
Ferrigno.
Neil Ferrigno. Neil Ferrigno. Possibly Neil Postman. Probably Lou Ferrigno. It's not really clear who's to say really. Uh, I'm going to dispense with the formalities of Happy 4th of July or Happy Independence Day because it was not a weekend that felt particularly independent. It was not a celebration of independence from where I sit. And it wasn't a very happy one either. It was already dark as we were heading in to this 4th of July weekend. We are 1 week into the crusade of the conservatives to pass a national abortion ban, and they had their big feather in the cap moment of getting Roe versus Wade sent back to the states, which means next states can start banning it, and then Congress can pass a federal law, and then the Supreme Court, which just quote-unquote sent stuff back to the states, can then enforce the supremacy clause on any states that do not want to endure or support the National Abortion Ban Amendment. So not a banner weekend for women's civil liberties or the reproductive rights of anyone capable of being pregnant. But then in a 4th of July that will be memorable because it just feels so quintessentially where we're at today. There were multiple mass shooting events, including a very prominent one in Highland Park, Illinois, that resulted in the death of 6 and the wounding of another 24. And just devastating news out of Highland Park here. The suspect now apprehended after initially being able to get off of the scene, doing all the right things to escape. He now has been apprehended. We now know more about the suspect, that his grandfather was involved in Republican politics, that his father fairly prominent political views, and that this guy is another right-wing guy who has done this, a la Kyle Rittenhouse. And it's just, I think the reaction to across the political spectrum, right, was very quintessentially where we're at as well. You have J.B. Pritzker of Illinois getting some steam. Maybe people looking to get Pritzker to run here. Pritzker mania, the Pritzl heads, they are out in effect here. Pritzl mania, running wild, and he's out there saying that there needs to be more action done on gun control. Meanwhile, his opponent is saying we need to move on and just celebrate the 4th of July. And it just, dude, everything about this Highland Park one, it's not as horrible as this. It's not the worst one we've ever seen or whatever. It's so on the nose for where we're at right now. There's like one half of the country that sees this as an isolated incident, a real bummer on a specific 4th of July. And then there's the other half of the country that goes, wow, civil liberties are an assault all over the country. And this mass shooting event that happened on the 4th of July is a symptom of a greater disease of gun violence and a lack of gun control in the country.
Yeah, I was listening to the coverage of the shooting in Illinois, and this was on a Fox coverage, I believe. Yes, it was a Fox coverage of a local person, local business owner in this area, who was attending the 4th of July celebration, and who they had on basically to give a first person account of the shooting. And as this person kept talking, the individual then kind of did a sequitur into the laws up for grabs, or the legislation that may or may not happen, and how we all want this sensible gun control legislation and it was just total silence. They just let her just sit out there because they knew there wasn't any sort of reaction that they could give. And just going to dead air and then going to commercial, because there are just certain rules in this way now that we don't talk about it. I don't know where to go from there.
No, sorry. It's just not possible to pass a law to do anything to solve this problem. Next question. No, it's super unsatisfactory. And I mean, I think this is the growing narrative of discontent that you are seeing build inside of the Democratic electorate here. It doesn't have a clear place to go yet. But, like, just even the exploration of J.B. Pritzker, who... I am sorry. There is no more damning indictment of sexism in American politics than the first exploration of a non-Biden alternative is J.B. Pritzker, who, like, fails any sort of cosmetic politician test that we would normally have for even male candidates, let alone female candidates, when we're in a moment that is distinctly female. A moment that is about mothers worried about their kids getting shot by guns at school, and about women wanting to have the choice about when to become mothers. And, like, we're going to run J.B. Pritzker here on this. But, like, what we're seeing here is whether it's guns, where it's like, wow, we can't even go down to the city council and demand that the police chief resign. Like, is that really, it's got to be that much of a lift? Like, they've only got, like, the school police chief to resign. But there are still so many people who oversaw that day in Uvalde still on the board. Government doesn't respond to them. You go to the Democrats here on a national level, and you're like, we want a gun bill. We want you guys to do something. And, like, they're like, well, if we're going to do that, we've got to work with the Republicans. And, like, we all know that the Republicans aren't actually interested in doing anything other than bringing down the temperature on a call to action. They are going to do just enough politically to be able to try to bring down the temperature on the outrage, but never enough politically to actually solve the problem. The same can be said about Democrats too in many cases, but, like, explicitly and exclusively with the Republicans. Insofar as any of them have interest in meaningful gun control, it is under the contours of, well, I'm noticing that a lot of people in my district are pretty angry about this. They seem to be very upset about this most recent gun tragedy. It's not real action, and I think it's people want more out of their politicians. People want politicians that speak to their concerns. And Biden is just opening up this massive, massive gulf right now for a primary. In the last month, it was somewhat open in May, but, like, really it was a thing that more people wanted than was probably possible. Dude, I think that the scales have completely tipped here. Joe Biden's making it nearly inevitable at this point, I feel like.
Yeah, at some point, the direction of the Democrats is giving off the notion that you can just be the mirror of the Republicans. You can just hold up the mirror, and then that's the job.
Yes, the hypocrisy shaming. It's like there's this real belief, I think some pollsters even think it, that hypocrisy shaming changes votes. Right? No, I mean, like, think about how many debate arguments and that sort of thing are structured around, like, you're a hypocrite. I've never actually seen it borne out that you're a hypocrite results in people actually thinking differently about their votes.
Yeah, generally when it's such a direct corner like that, I don't think you're really persuading anyone. If you're getting to the point of calling someone a hypocrite, I mean, no matter how valid it is,
And now the former supporter of like that politician goes, "Oh, am I a hypocrite too?" It's kind of like the hypocrite debate strategy is kind of like Hillary Clinton's deplorable strategy, like the actual problem with the deplorable strategy. Not that she was wrong on the numbers; she was probably underestimating. But the issue is that once you say half of them are deplorables, everyone thinks they're in the half.
Yeah, and everyone can envision them characterizing her, or characterizing them, and even when you shouldn't consider yourself as one of the deplorables, that should be your indicator that she wasn't talking about you, but instead you get wrong, you get angry at her because of how wrong she is. But you only would be in agreement with her that you're both not in that category. But yeah, it's some slippery. Damn it.
Yeah, no, it's a bit of a slippery slope, as it were. But as I'm thinking about the gun response here, Biden and his team just passed a bipartisan gun control measure. You would think that they would like you to believe it was a major accomplishment. There was an article in Politico that I was joking about among all of us last week, was seemingly ghost written by Christian Cinema. That was just this profile and courage of Christian Cinema, like courageously getting everybody to work together and pass this major piece of gun legislation. And it's so clear that that is not enough. And everyone knew when it passed that it wasn't enough. And frankly, I'm glad that they passed it in the way that they did, and here's why. Because I think it really proves the absolute positive limits of bipartisanship. And I don't know that you need any more evidence that bipartisanship is not up to meeting the challenges of the moment, because fundamentally when you try to do bipartisanship, you're working with the very people who are making everything worse than this gun control bill, where you've now passed something. It's called gun control. It'll probably help some people in their races in November, but it won't actually help anybody who is a victim of a shooting. It won't probably prevent many shootings at all. It's just this limited around the edges sort of strategy here. And I just think, especially among younger Democrats, people are tired of this. People see through this now. I think this worked for boomers. I'm doing the best I can-ism, but I don't think it actually works for. I don't think it works for Zoomers, and I don't think it works for millennials. And now we millennials are getting close to being in the middle of the electorate. The Zoomers are entering into the electorate, and I mean, well, I'll say one last thing on this before I toss it back to you.
Yeah.
If the establishment thinks Kamala Harris is the answer, I think it is very clear she ain't. I totally informal polls. I did those polls on Twitter and on the Patreon of who's more charismatic, Hillary Clinton or Kamala Harris. And Hillary Clinton didn't just beat Kamala Harris in both of those polls. And I know this audience, y'all don't like her. Hillary Clinton routed Kamala Harris in both of those polls. It was 70-30 both times. And if it is 70-30, it can't be her. It's not her. It's got to be somebody else.
You got me thinking, talking about the generational disconnect from centrism. I'm thinking that the Zoomers, and you know what, mostly us as well, the Gen X crowd, or whatever the hell we are, the non-baby boomer, non-Zoomer. What sort of experience do we have with our modern politicians using the filibuster in a way that is at all expressive. Like they have spent their entire adult lives under the influence of centrism, but not just under the influence of centrism, under the influence of centrism that really doesn't have a face, because the filibuster is this tool that is just this phantom effect, where the people in the center who otherwise had to use this tool in no way are the expressions, or there are not these moments where the center proves its worth, whether for right or for wrong. There's never this moment where it's and here's why we have to grind to a halt and do nothing. And there used to be these moments in Congress when Congress explained itself, and those moments just aren't there anymore. And just think about the public of today and how much more they need their hand held in the whole information into knowledge process, as opposed to a generation before. Well, that generation before at least had Congress holding its hand as it filibustered out loud. And now
that would make a huge difference. And I mean, not for nothing, the losing the visual filibuster, I think, has, if there is any merit to the filibuster, I know that this audience and frankly every panelist in the show is not a supporter of the filibuster, so there's not really anyone to bring in a counterpoint on this one. But if there was any merit at all on the filibuster, it would have been if it was still being done in a way Mr. Smith Goes to Washington style. People are up there and pulling on the toga and really using it as a moment to launch a campaign or cement an idea, put a flag on the ground, ideologically speaking, that sort of thing. As it stands, the people who have been behind the curve on the filibuster, and basically I think that it was pretty much every Democratic primary candidate in 2020. Was Julian Castro get rid of the filibuster guy? I don't remember if Castro was, but it's basically Warren, and that was it. That was the only get rid of the filibuster candidate.
Well, there was the get rid of the filibuster candidate, but then there was also the non-cry of get rid of the non-talking filibuster.
Right.
And Manchin even came out in the very beginning of Biden's term and said, "I'm okay with the conversation of getting rid of the non-talking filibuster," and no one took him up on his offer.
Well, now here's the thing. Here's the thing with that, because that was also a Sanders position too, basically during the primaries. He's shifted now, and he's gotten on the right side of the tracks now. It's just he had to be brought there. So partial credit award for sure. But when we're thinking about the filibuster, I think that even if it was still around, dude. The reality, we've seen this now with the Republicans, is if the one thing standing in their way from getting the national right to life bill passed through Congress was the filibuster, Mitch McConnell would find a way to get around that filibuster, either by invoking some weird parliamentary trick, or he would just do away with the filibuster entirely, using the Tuesday loophole that applies only on Tuesdays in odd-numbered months.
Yes.
The filibuster does not preserve minority rights, and I think I can't stress it enough. It only works. Essentially, it only works as good as your opposition is moral and ethical. If your opposition respects the idea of the filibuster, then yeah, it works. But no.
So
go ahead.
The two things I would say to that: number one, in order to get rid of the filibuster altogether, it is a lot easier to do that whenever you have the non-talking filibuster eliminated, because you have documented proof of all these individuals making all of these declarative statements, and it's just messier. but also a lot of these same moments can still happen, and the filibuster can still get in the way. But as the filibuster gets in the way, whenever it's out loud instead of the non-talking filibuster, it affects public sentiment. And in the mode that we're in now, it mutes public sentiment, and it keeps everyone quieter. It doesn't keep everyone quiet, but it obviously keeps enough people quiet to allow, for instance, Joe Biden to be electable. Like it allows enough of the wrong form of centrism to just linger. And I don't think it is a worthless adventure to get rid of the non-talking filibuster, if for no other reason than to make everything louder, to amplify what's going on in the center, and to make certain people own it, and then to hopefully give that as a further cause to eliminate the filibuster, because it looks like in the position that we're at, it doesn't look like there's a tenable pathway.
I think it's not unfair to say that it is almost, it's a brain teaser to come up with a scenario where having access to the filibuster would actually be of any utility to the Democrats in a plausible way. In a way that the Republicans, as we have known them to be, as they have demonstrated by hot-shotting Amy Coney Barrett onto the Supreme Court, as they have demonstrated by holding up Merrick Garland's confirmation hearings, as they have demonstrated time and again, Lindsey Graham, use my words against me, all of this stuff. If it's on the agenda, it's all the ends justify the means. So in that sense, it's like, okay, then is there even a scenario where you could see them successfully deploying the filibuster and actually doing something that progressives would go like, I'm glad that we had the filibuster for that one? I can't think of one. I really can't. I mean, I'll give you I mean, it's my own thought experiment, so I'll give you a second if something comes to mind. But it's I could see a number of scenarios where the Republicans could use it. Because almost everything, like the Republicans never want to pass anything affirmationally other than this national abortion amendment, which, as we've now discussed, they're just going to do it. It's very clear that, like, among other things, they've established that they think that this is of such high value that it doesn't matter if it has anything approximating majority support. Like
okay, so I think what's really valuable at this point is to contextualize that with what we were and were not talking about in the 2020 primary. Like, why were we saying Bernie is a better choice than Warren, or that Biden is electable when others are not? When this subject, when codifying Roe versus Wade, it was around, but it sure wasn't a point of contention in debates, in conversations. But this is what actually was faced. And man, like the willingness for us to divide ourselves over, for instance, reparations, which is a valid subject, but
I said at the time the reparations debate was going to age unbelievably unfavorably in terms of relevancy, and like it only looks even sillier now. Biden
won't touch marijuana.
Right.
We lost ground on Roe versus Wade, like to the point where it's neutralized, and we are dividing each other over reparations. Like, how aspirational do we have to talk? And how rhetorical does it have to be? And then actually how pragmatic should the conversation be? And I think we're way off. Like this is the way that the Republicans love us to be wrong.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think part of it too, dude. No, I mean, I look back at other things, like, for example, I'm definitely not defending the neo-libs on this, but, like, I remember also getting poo-pooed about the Supreme Court during the 2016 election and the importance of the Supreme Court and how the Republicans are singularly focused on it. And it behooves us to start putting priority and focus onto something that all the polling was showing at the time, for idiotic reasons, was just not a priority among Democratic voters. And that went doubly so for a lot of left voters who like to criticize, like, you know, the vote blue no matter who. Oh, they just hold the Supreme Court hostage. Oh, they just hold the Supreme Court hostage. Well, now we're being held hostage by the Supreme Court. So I don't know. Maybe they had a point there on that one at least. I mean, like, I think it's possible to, like, look back on that one and like that's I think where the Republicans really get us is that the libs and the progressives and lefties basically can't see the problem until it's already arrived, even when the problem's on the horizon. And like as a collective unit, there is just an utter short-sightedness that maybe individuals can see the lay of the land, but like the actual collective can't. Like, this abortion thing was not like secret. It was pretty out in the open. The Federalist Society stuff, Amy Coney Barrett being put in position and hotshot onto the Supreme Court. Amy Coney Barrett was already on the federal bench with limited qualifications, and it was very clear that they wanted to groom her to get her onto the bench, onto the Supreme Court as quickly as possible. That could have been the contours of debate arguments between many of the leading candidates in the Democratic electorate, and it just simply wasn't. And the Democratic electorate, for their part, was not ready to hear somebody say we need to get rid of the filibuster, we need to actually expand the court and put more justices on the court. The electorate didn't think that they needed a plan for that at the time. It's unfortunate. It really is, because, like, we did need a plan for that.
Yeah, I think also the conflict in Ukraine is a conflict that typically, whenever the U.S. is engaged in something, it's generally giving the current president some sort of bump for being a, quote, wartime president. But Biden isn't actually a wartime president. We're not actually involved in this conflict.
And yet he's still trying, right? Yeah, he still kind of drapes himself in it. I know. I mean, God.
Yeah, and so there's this room of what is Biden going to, drape himself in or be saddled with, like however you see it, as far as the war in Ukraine between now and 2024, and
I don't know how to understand his camp's position on Ukraine in any other way other than this is y'all's mess then. Like they want to keep saying, oh, it's Putin's fault. Oh, it's Putin's fault. Zelensky didn't listen to us. Like, I talked about this a lot in the last episode. Well, that's cool. But, like, if you don't do anything about it, it's one thing for the firefighters to show up. Essentially, like, what America and the West are doing is they're being the Uvalde cops. The firefighters show up and they go, oh, well, that fire was caused by cigarettes. And that's not correct, but, like, just run with me here. They're saying, like, essentially that's Biden's position on, like, oh, Zelensky, we gave him all this warning. He should have been smoking in bed. And then because they've decided that he was smoking in bed, they're not going to respond. They're not going to put out the fire. They're not going to do anything. And the whole block is burning, and the fire department is looking at the neighborhood, and they're like, I don't get why you guys are so mad at us. It's not like we were smoking in bed.
Yeah. Live in a society.
We truly... I like to say that. I'm a big fan of saying that we live in a society. In a society. No, I'm with you. I really have questions as to what Biden's going to run again. I know his team keeps saying doggedly that he's going to run, but, like, God, Javier Becerra's appearance on Meet the Press this weekend, where he's basically like, probably not going to be able to do much on abortion. Obviously, the president wants to do everything, but he was also going to do nothing.
Well, first, not to get too far away with Ukraine, but before we get too far away, I have trouble understanding whatever direction Biden takes on Ukraine. I have trouble understanding how they how they get across any sort of action to the public in a way that they're going to receive it and understand, like, because this is getting complicated in a way that I'm trying to think of a different war that we've been involved with before that kind of quacked like this, where we're in it but we're not, and this is but
I feel like Vietnam had economic herky-jerky components to it. But in this, typically, like, a conflict can be, good for an economy. Like the U.S. the U.S. and the Western underperformance on this is very much a byproduct of, like, not being involved, I would argue.
Yeah, and more specifically to this, I know we weren't, like, getting into this, but I'm very curious what happens as far as the rhetoric that Putin gives now that Finland and Sweden are part of NATO, and he's said he has put some lines down, but I don't exactly understand what they mean as far as how this conflict goes further, and I feel like there's some sort of escalation point based on Finland and Sweden now being a part of, or is it Finland and Switzerland?
No, I don't think it's Switzerland. I think it's Sweden and Finland. Yeah, I mean, look, they both have to join. I think it was because that's probably the only thing that's keeping them territorially intact, because it's very clear now that, like, Putin's on an expansionist crusade here.
Yes, but also for good grief for Finland. I mean, I don't know exactly why they weren't a part of NATO before, but for them to basically signal that, like, we're joining NATO so that in case they cross into our border, it's all hands on deck immediately. Just to know that someone out there is thinking it's getting so real that Russia might invade Finland.
Yeah, there's, like, this really weird, like, Neville Chamberlain energy going on among, like, the West, where it's like, well, we don't want Russia to go any further, and we would like to stop, and they probably will. They're probably not going to go any further. We're also gonna, try to join the NATO, and we're gonna expand it out a little bit. And it's like, if we just give Putin parts of Ukraine, maybe he'll stop. You've seen that kind of editorial written a number of times now over the last several months, and I'm, especially now that the Russians are on an offensive, and it seems to be going fairly well for them at the moment. I think they're emboldened now for the next several months. I see no sign of abatement here. The chance to me to stop this was early, bombing that tank column as they were trying to roll into Ukraine and stuck in the mud. And now I think they still need to be brought to heel. I just think that, like, they're now going to have serious positions on their hands. The Ukrainians bombing Russian border towns. Some people looked at that this weekend as, like, kind of bold. I actually looked at it as kind of desperate and weak. They're scared.
Well, if I remember, we were talking before we started recording about how no one has anything to say about, well, what is the current media giving cover for? And if people responded with something specific related to Ukraine, I would believe it. I haven't seen that direction there. But that would be like the number one cover that the Supreme Court is giving the media as far as what America is not keeping in tune with. I just don't. It really has taken over, and I wonder what would cause us to be fractured as far as our attention back away from the Supreme Court. How bad would Ukraine have to get? Like, it seems that it would have to get pretty bad.
It would have to get. I mean, at this point, especially, there are certain elements that just, it seems impossible to see people thinking now, even among liberal voters, oh, we have to think about these people suffering abroad. I think basically liberal, progressive, left voters are hurting so bad here at home, whether it's student loans, whether it's medical access to abortion, possibly soon contraception, possibly access to your gay marriage. There are so many human rights issues that are on board here that, rightly or wrongly, I just don't think there's the emotional or political bandwidth for really struggling and thinking about the rampant human rights violations that have been perpetrated by the Russian government on the Ukrainian people for no legitimate reason, for reasons that are not even remotely legitimate. So it's definitely something I think about.
Hey, I just noticed the meeting time in the Zoom chat.
Yep, I'm aware of that. I was bringing us in for the close here. Bryan, if you want to tell people where to find you on the internet, that'd be great.
I'm at Postman Retweets, at Postman Artines.
And you can find me at DWATG on Twitter. You can support the show by going to patreon.com/DWATG. Buck a show is all I ask, $1 per show. Other places, Netflix, are raising their rates. Don't worry about the government. We'll never do anything like that. All I ask from all of you is $1 a show. If you all did that, it would be like clutch and transformational. I get that that's not like the way that podcast funding models work. You can't have 100% subscription rates or whatever, but I try to keep the rate low enough so that for $1 per show, you can get that. You get occasionally extra episodes. Like last month, there's an entire extra show up there. That's I'm pretty proud of that extra show. And you, of course, get the video versions of all of these and the episodes out a little bit sooner. So please, if you would, consider subbing up at patreon.com/DWATG. Don't worry about the government. It is a listener-supported podcast. I want to thank all of you for listening. I want to thank Bryan Halverson for being a part of the show today. And until the next one, bye-bye.